island awaits you.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Underrated Podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss the films that we feel are underrated, underappreciated, or have just slipped under the radar and passed most people by. This show is a collaboration of friends and podcasters comprised of Alan and Fred Torres.
Hey, what's up?
Alan's over there. He's with us in spirit as a ghostly kind of form over there.
Dude.
Also, Ariel and Sergio Ortiz.
Hello.
Hello.
And I am Derek McDuff. Today we're going to be talking about The Island, a 2005 film directed by, wait for it, Michael Bay. The film stars Ewan McGregor, Scarlett Johansson, Djimon Hounsou, Sean Bean, Michael Clark Duncan, and Steve Buscemi. The film was poorly received by critics, earning a 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, and also a disappointment at the box office. While it had a $126 million budget, in America, it only made $38 million and only $162 million worldwide. So yeah, this movie obviously is one I wanted to talk about on the Underrated Podcast because it is a Michael Bay movie who does not have a very good reputation. But in my opinion, it is probably his best movie. It feels the least like a Michael Bay movie. It's a movie that is set in, get this, the near future, because this movie came out in 2005, of the near future of July 2019. What will that be like?
Oh, yeah. It's literally 5 days from now.
Yeah. So when we're recording, it starts on July 19th, so probably actually right around when this is going to drop. It's set over a few days, so if you guys are listening to this, you guys will be... We're recording about this movie that happens in the future, but you guys will be listening to this movie that happens in the past. But yeah, it is a kind of, one of those 5 minutes in the future type movies. It's about clones and conspiracies and all this cool stuff. Let me ask you guys, I'll just open it up to the floor. What did you guys think about this movie?
All right. Well, this is a Michael Bay movie.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think makes this movie stand out from other movies by Michael Bay and other movies of this kind of genre, of like this sort of realistic science fiction, mainly action movie, is that the story is kind of unique. I mean, in execution, it makes it seem pretty generic, but I believe that just looking at it and seeing everything kind of unfold and watching these two characters who are they have the bodies of adults but like the minds of children, basically.
Yeah. They're
15.
Educated to I think he says middle school.
Yeah, 15-year-old.
To basic behavioral skills.
Yeah, and they don't really understand the world at all.
Right. And also having them created to believe this false reality of like this post-apocalyptic world and that they're the only survivors left, and this is like some underground or it's some facility that where all survivors are. It's cool seeing that these characters kind of explore that, and with them the audience they go along with the ride with them and get to learn as they do everything that unfolds in front of them, and it's pretty crazy seeing everything kind of unfold. So I found that pretty entertaining. I mean, aside from that's just the story, but like the whole execution I'll get into in a bit.
Yeah, Fred or Ariel, what did you guys think?
I'd seen this like pretty much when it had come out, which was in what year was it? 2005.
2005,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, which is now looking and it being based in 2019. Michael Bay had some pretty high hopes for 15 years from when he wrote it or directed or whatever. Did he write it too or no?
Let me check. It's written by Alex Kurtzman and Robert Orkey. Those guys, they're like a writing team. They show up in a lot of shit, like
they
some
did
of the Star Trek movies.
Yeah. So they had high hopes for 14 years in the future.
Well, other than the clone stuff, it's like, on some flying cars, it's not that crazy futuristic, which is one of the things I like about it a lot. I mean, they got phones wrong, but like they didn't predict iPhones. They were like,
and they thought MSN was still a thing too.
Yeah, they had like that Razor phone that was like you plug it and it's on the screen. I'm like, oh, that didn't go that way, but
yeah, but as like you said, Michael Bay, by Michael Bay standards, it was not as Michael Bay as it could be.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like... I mean, there's parts, but it overall doesn't feel like a Michael Bay
in the
movie.
timeline of Michael Bay history. Where does this fall?
This
I know
came
it
out-
falls after Armageddon for sure.
Yeah, it came out after between probably the two most like kind of like iconic Michael Bay movies, or at least the ones that are iconic in the terms of his franchises. It came out after Bad Boys 2 and right before Transformers 1.
Okay.
And I think there's this really good video essay that talks about like his whole career, which you guys should check out. It's by Patrick H. Willems. But it's basically he got all his kind of like Michael Bay, like over the top, like explosions, like scantily clad women, racist jokes, like out of the way in Bad Boys 2. And this was kind of him being like, okay, like I'm going to make a kind of a more like
there were some
evenly paced.
misogynists.
I mean, it's for a Michael Bay movie. I'm just
Yeah.
It doesn't have. It's kind of like of all his movies, it's the one that's kind of the most like, slowly paced and like the shots aren't like super cutty. It does have a lot of really interesting
And
cinematography in it.
I think that lends to like it being,
Oh, hold on.
it being kind of like a mystery kind of thing to it, and maybe it could be attributed to Alec Kurtzman and is it Mike?
Robert Orsi. They write some. They're pretty hit or miss. Sometimes they write some good stuff. They wrote like the Amazing Spider-Man movies though, so they've written some bad stuff too.
You know that they're writers on Lost too, right?
What?
Yes. So
I gotta double check that.
yeah, they're from J.J. Abrams' crew. So like yeah, by that standards, it wasn't as bad.
They
as,
did
like,
not do Lost. They did Alias.
Oh, but they were part of J.J. Abrams' crew.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I suppose they're hit or miss. Some of their stuff is really good. But
yeah, but so by that standards, it was really good. You can never do wrong with Ewan McGregor.
oh my god, he's so good in this. As
Handsome
a
also.
dual role.
Dual
again.
role again.
He's-
We just finished talking about another dual role by Brendan Fraser in Milk and Bone podcast before this, and so yeah, I think it was it was pretty okay. I mean, I remember liking it. I still liked it. It's a good summer movie.
Yeah.
For sure, which we are in the summer, so I didn't mind it. It was like you could see the blockbusterness of it. What was the thing? Oh, because it's a Michael Bay movie, another key indicator of that is the product placement.
Yeah, there's a lot of product placement in this movie.
Yes, Aquafina
Xbox.
Xbox. There's another one.
Bing.
Puma.
What? The Microsoft, like, what is it?
Yeah.
Bing,
MSN, yeah.
Because that's how he got the movie made. And this is actually, interestingly enough, the only movie that Michael Bay made that lost money.
Mm-hmm.
Which doesn't surprise me at all because it's not like a Michael Bay big blockbuster. Like, I mean, it is, but like not in like it's not like a Transformers movie.
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, it did have its action moments, like the freeway scene and things like that. But I feel like it was more of a, like you said before, a slow pace, story, a bit more story driven.
Like the first half, especially, is like kind of like it's very reminiscent of these kind of like 80s paranoia thrillers, like like Running Man or Logan's Run or like all these like kind of like weird like 80s
utopian kind of like
and it's
You told me it was like Running Man.
Alan, you're fucking up again. But yeah, and like there's this really interesting piece by Roger Ebert who talks about like how it is kind of like two movies. Like the first half is this kind of like slow-paced sci-fi thriller where you're like, what the fuck is going on? The second half is kind of like more of like a high-paced action movie, and he describes it as like kind of surf and turf where you've got like two meals that kind of work together. But yeah, I digress.
And it is a fairly long movie. Like looking at it before we started watching, I was like, oh man, this is like 2 hours long. And you kind of, because we kind of saw it over the course of like we had paused it midway and we had to do stuff and then we came back to it, so it did feel long, but then at the same time, because of the story and then that bit of action in the middle, it was pretty well paced.
It's much well
Pearl
put.
Harbor's way longer.
Yeah,
Pearl Harbor is way longer.
It's not like Pearl Harbor or like even the later Transformers. All the Transformers kept getting longer. Like this one, I don't feel its length as much as like most Michael Bay movies. Like Transformers 2, I was like ready to leave the fucking theater when I saw that movie.
All right. What can I say about this? So yeah, you do feel the two parts of the movie. The second half, you do feel like it's a Michael Bay movie with all the explosions, all that stuff. The first half is, I want to say the reason it probably wasn't that big. It's because it's a very generic story, in the sense of like you start to kind of see where it's heading when you realize that they're clones, and they kind of give you kind of go, oh, okay. Because I did feel like the movie felt kind of long. But just because at a certain point I start figuring out, okay, well, they're going to run this way or they're going to do that. They figured out they're clones, so they have to go find this other person. So at first, where I was kind of excited in the beginning because you don't know what's going on, as soon as you kind of figure it out, it's just, oh yeah, this is, I know where we're going. I know where we're going in the middle. I know how we're going to end. Not exactly, you know what I mean? But you kind of already, the story's kind of progressing in your brain as you're watching it. You're kind of playing play by play ahead of it instead of being surprised at like every turn or something.
Yeah, the
like
first
Like
half
they-
is very much more of a like what's happening, where the second
Yeah.
half you know what's
Like
happening.
they could have progressed the first half into a movie in itself.
Yeah, in itself,
ended
and it would have
with
ended
them
well.
escaping.
Al-
They
although-
did, and it's called The Maze Runner.
Yeah.
Although
Those are
I
amazing.
did really like that it, you know, like it is, it's like, 2019, it's this crazy future, and you get outside, it's like there's a couple flying cars, and like phones are a little nicer, but it's basically just the regular world. It's
Yeah.
not like this crazy futuristic post-apocalyptic society where people are wearing like, you know, the spaceman onesies and stuff.
I think you get that feeling because of the high technology that they have in the base. They
Yeah.
don't tell you that. You just get that feeling because you see them come out. You see them almost Matrix style come out of a bag. So you're like, oh
That's what I was
shit.
gonna say.
So
It's-
in your head, you start thinking like, wow, society, there must be flying cars. There must be all kinds of shit. They never tell you that. You just assume that as a viewer. Because even I thought the same way. But then as soon as they get out, you go, oh shit, it's the same thing. It's just
Yeah.
a little bit more technology. And
well,
then,
it was trams. It was the flying trams.
Yeah, it was the flying tram.
That's what I was
They
thinking.
weren't actually flying; they were on wires.
Okay, yeah. They were.
So,
it was like
yeah.
Wakanda-esque.
Oh, but and also
Yeah.
the train. Okay.
Well,
and
it-
there was also trains that were like magnetic.
yeah, that was
Yeah,
what I was
that's
saying.
what I meant.
But all it was like instead of having the track, like, because so there isn't that how the bullet trains move right now, magnetically or something?
well, they're
Yeah.
like in the sky. Like,
Yeah, but
they're
well,
like
no, I
rail
mean, like the
trains.
one in the ground, instead of having the tracks, it has like little light
And
bars.
then they have like a
Start
flying
off,
motorcycle.
yeah.
Yeah.
friction.
Yeah. No, that's like going off of that Matrix in the bag thing. I was at
Grand
that
Theft
point. I
Auto
was like,
Online.
oh, this is Michael Bay's Matrix.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's like they took that literally from the Matrix.
I mean, he takes a lot from like a lot of '80s movies in the Matrix, and there is a lot of things.
the
like,
Matrix came before this movie.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Matrix came like 5
Oh.
years before this.
Well, yeah,
Oh.
there's a lot of things that I think does contribute to this kind of being iffy, is because like it's a lot of that style of the Hollywood blockbuster, and a lot of the editing choices, a lot of the action choices, the explosions, the slow mo, the 360 cam, the overbearing music, which
the color is Michael
color-
Bay.
The color is
too.
very
Yeah.
Michael Bay, but
It's
I
like-
think it works in this movie.
What it
It
reminds
works
better
me-
than it
better
doesn't.
than
That it works
in other
be- yeah, it
The
movies.
works
color
in-
palette in this movie actually.
what it
really
reminds
like a
me
lot.
of with a combination of
sunlight.
all
It's
those
not
things.
garish like
Sunlight
a
and
lot.
Yeah.
shadows.
It's
all-
not like over the head.
Okay.
The
sorry.
combination of all those things, the lighting, music, editing, explosion, slow mo, 360 cam, it all reminds me of like a stock iMovie action trailer template. You know what I mean?
And here's the thing: before we were kind of talking, and you were saying you think this would be better if it was directed by somebody else. I actually kind of got to go the other way. I think that this movie, like directed by most other like just kind of like basic like journeyman directors, it would be just like an action movie that we would forget
Yeah,
about.
but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to. That just because it's made in the way that it is, doesn't mean that it has to be made the way that it is. You know what I mean?
What?
Like,
True that.
No.
well, we were
No,
discussing-
because every director
Yeah.
puts their own spices. What he's kind of saying.
And here's the thing:
we
like
were talking about how in the first like part of the movie where they're still in that facility and they still have, you know, when you're everything is still kind of a
Like a
mystery. It's
mystery.
interesting. It's interesting to see without any action. So then when you add all that action movie stuff into it where it doesn't need to be, it's kind of overbearing and it's not needed.
You know what it was at first.
It's
Like I
extra
said,
fat.
at first I feel like it's an interesting movie, and then towards the second half, I feel like it's a Michael Bay movie.
that's
That's
And
fine.
I think, and
That's
that's what
fine.
I'm saying. Like that's their
but I like
spice.
that it takes the time to get to the Michael Bay
But then also
crazy
the action
scenes.
could be like, you know, there's like shots that only last like 0.01 second, but then it cuts to another shot and it's like, okay, action movie, anything else you want to show me? And it's like, you know, that kind of stuff is overbearing. That's why movies like John Wick get a lot of, you know, acclaim from critics, is because, you know, they have like these long beautiful fight scenes and they're really well choreographed and they're not cutting away, they're not jump cutting all the time and using overbearing standard action movie practices to show the action. It's because you're actually seeing the action happening and it's well choreographed, where in this one it's like
kind of like the Daredevil hallway scene where it's like one
Yeah.
long
Mm-hmm.
scene.
That's one criticism I do have with some of the
Old
some
Boy.
of the Marvel movies
Beautiful.
is like the elevator fight in the Winter Soldier, which people love. I'm like, there's so many cuts in that. Whereas I do really prefer like the Daredevil scene. But with this movie, like I think that Michael Bay like doesn't really get credit for having a really, really good eye and like making like really well looking movies, because you see like his imitators. You see movies like Battleship that are like made by just like
See, here's the problem. You would assume we saw Battleship.
Okay.
I have not.
Yeah, I
Did
have,
my man
but
just say
yeah.
Michael Scott Bay?
What?
Did he have like an office thing?
I might have.
Did he say
Michael Scott.
We'll listen to the tape. We'll play it back. But
Michael Scott Bay.
but anyway, I lost my train of thought. But
Your
he
train
does,
of thought powered by magnetic rails.
But he does have this really good eye where he makes these movies, and like he has this amazing style that a lot of people don't give him credit for. That he's got a lot of imitators, and nobody's ever really able to like kind of replicate his very iconic style. He's got these like amazing shots that kind of go around the characters. Like everybody looks great. The movies like look like even his cheaper movies like Pain and Gain look like they cost a lot of money, and like he does a lot of stuff practically. I think a lot of directors did these kind of movies. They would make it like all CG, whereas there is CG in this, like for stuff that he has to do CG, but he does practically whenever he can. He is like a big proponent of that stuff, even to the point where like Chris Nolan says he's like a fan of his, because those are both guys who are like, they love shooting practical, great looking effects and then like using CG to kind of like Chris Nolan, yeah.
I'm a friend with Chris Nolan. Let me direct Batman.
Like comes from that kind of like David Fincher like school of like these guys who came up on commercials and like were raised on all these really great visuals, these really great practical effects, and kind of implemented. And
So
Well, no, because the only thing I was going to say about the practical effects, I mean, yeah, they're practical effects, but it always seems like whenever you think of Michael Bay, you think of huge ass explosions. I mean, the colors are there and that stuff, but I always think of like just like Transformers. And all this, there's going to be fucking huge fire when there. Does there really need to be? Sometimes I ask myself,
one thing real
does there
quick-
need to be huge explosions, or can we do with something else?
Well,
Like everything everything he does is big, big.
And that's the thing. Well, I'm gonna say this real quick, and this applies to a lot, like pretty much all Michael Bay movies. The bigger he requires big explosions because he doesn't really know how to shoot it properly. So he relies on the explosion itself. When really you could shoot it, you can hire. You don't even do it. You have to do it yourself. You can hire a proper cinematographer to help you construct a shot that will actually capture.
He's
an
got
explosion
really good cinematography. If you look at his movies,
he films the same explosion with 5 different cameras, and he puts each shot of those from those cameras into the movie, so the explosion happens like, and then from this angle, and then from this angle,
okay,
and then it's like, okay, we get it.
Yeah, he likes a
We
lot
have
of
those
gratuitous
takes
shots
for security. You don't need to put them all.
He likes his gratuitous shot. There's not a lot of that in this movie. There's not a lot of gratuitous.
That's true, but like there is.
So the thing that
every shot.
Yeah, but you know what the thing about the Power Rangers though, they actually use it when they need it, and instead of just throwing it out there because it's like
this
fucking
movie
explosion.
doesn't do that.
Like,
though. This movie uses it when it needs
massive
it.
boner.
So does the thing come down to that? If Michael Bay didn't have a reputation, would we have would this move? Maybe that's the thing though, because it did come out. So, but now,
between
with
Bad Boys
us,
and
with
Transformers.
us,
like
with us
I said,
watching it though now.
I think what we've said is like I said, if the movie would have continued like the first half, I think it would have been a little bit. Because look, even the action when they're going, I think a little less explosiony. And I'm just saying, just in the sense of like, just to feel that still like
And it
that
does
which it
still
makes you feel in the
have-
first part.
It does.
But
still
I'm not
have-
saying it's a lot. I'm not saying it's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, like, if we tone down maybe some of the cars flipping and fucking bullets in the middle,
Yeah.
like cops are dying. Like, if we would have toned it down a little bit, because it at one point it just goes off the rails. I mean, these guys, I get it, they're mercenaries, but being mercenaries and being who they are, the espionage should have been a little better. They shouldn't have been flying into the middle of whatever,
Well, they
shooting
fucked
everything
it up.
up.
They were like, this is not how the
know,
plan was supposed to go.
And I get that that's what they explained, but that's where I'm like, this is Michael
And
Bay.
I kind of do like that they poke fun at it a little bit. Like when there's the one scene that kind of like took me out for a second where they fall off the building and they like immediately poke fun at it. Like the guy's just like, Jesus must love you. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
But that's what I'm saying. Like it's not that the movie is. How can I put it? It's not that Michael Bay, just because he's known for that stuff, it's just that he injects it. Did it really need to have like all that extra
So
stuff
that's
in it? No, but he has to inject it because he's Michael Bay.
It's
So going
kinda
back to
seems-
what you were saying.
It'd be like
Yeah.
me and making like for example, like Alan says, an episode of Power Rangers. A lot of people might do Power Rangers episode without explosions. Not me. I would make them all fucking pose and I'd do this big ass explosion.
Yeah.
Does it need it? No, but I want to inject that in
But see,
there
that's
because
the thing.
that's my
It
stuff.
has to. It can't just be an explosion for the sake of an explosion. And then, so yeah, the different going back to the first and second parts of the movie is that where the first part made like you feel that the second part with those explosions and among other things, which I'll talk about right now, it's kind of it feels like the movie's like telling you how to feel. It's like, okay, we are letting you know you have to feel like this, especially with the goddamn music. I swear to God, it's like sounds like every single stock website, royalty free action
It was
music.
Sandstorm.
Because they did.
Sandstorm was
It
in
was
it.
the same guy.
No.
It was Stephen
No, but
it was
Chbosky,
like
the guy who did
Sandstorm.
the Transformers score.
Basically.
The score. I don't know who. Yeah, freaking.
Tiesto?
It was the same guy who did
Some. It
Stephen
sounds like
Chbosky.
music that I could use for my Minecraft Let's Play on YouTube or something.
Well,
It's so overbearing.
follow Sergio on
Yeah.
Let's Play. Watch him play Minecraft and
Dead Fox plays Sex Box. All right, but look at it. It's like, okay, I get it. This is an action movie.
Okay,
Don't tell me how to feel. Like if you know, it's like, okay, I get it, but why can't you make the movie effective in a way where you don't have to do all this extra stuff to make me feel this way, where
Right.
it just comes naturally, like you did in the first part of the movie?
Let me ask you guys a question then, because the reason I wanted to do this movie on the other podcast is I don't think this is a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's a cool, interesting summer blockbuster that gets a lot of hate for being a Michael Bay movie that it doesn't really deserve.
I think this is where I'm going. Okay, if the whole movie would have been like the second half, I would have said it's a blockbuster summer boom 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 thing, right? But they're giving us a different movie in the beginning, which I wanted to see to the end like that.
So
I think is where the
it's
problem
kind
is.
of like you feel like it's kind of like
Two movies.
It's
It's like you
so-
said.
that's like
two
that Roger
movies.
Ebert movie
Exactly.
I brought, and he has a quote in the thing where he says it's like they do feel like two different movies.
It does.
They're both kind of like I like them both for their own reasons. I like the first half better. I
But
still like
together,
the second half.
it just doesn't.
But he's like, it's like, and he even says in the interview, can you like you know, do these work as one movie for you? And he says he's like, it works for me. He gave it 3 out of 4 stars. It worked for me. I understand that it won't work for everybody, but do you guys think that this movie has deserved this bad reputation?
I think so. Going back to both parts,
Yes.
is that it did work for me for the most part, but I feel like going back to it being two halves, I felt like it could be argued that they were like at the second half. Okay, Michael, you could put your explosions, insert them here, kind of thing.
Because that's what exactly that's how I
Yeah.
feel. Like it really does feel like they told him this is how it has to go in the first half, and the second half it's all yours, man. And then he goes bam. Because like I said, the action scenes were good. The action scenes were good, but did he have to have like all that freeway accidents and all that stuff and all these other? It could have been a simple like crashes and really just focus tightly on that story. I would have been like, damn, this is it.
Let me say one thing real fast, and I don't think it's so much like the studio saying, "Oh, you can't do this," as much as he was like, "I got a lot of that out of my system with Bad Boys," and then you know he went and did that again in Transformers, where he was like, "You know what?" Because he does have appreciation for like the Coen brothers and a lot of these guys, where he's like, "Okay, He's like, I'm gonna do something a little different." You see his tendencies, I think, come back at the end of it.
Yeah, you
I
do.
do think he did try and like you know. Like be like, okay, I'm gonna make something a little slower pace. I'll still have my action because I'm still Michael Bay, but I'm gonna do something a little more
'cause-
like shot. Like there's some interesting shots, like you know that scene at the beginning
That's
where like
true.
the water in the bed and stuff like that. There's a lot of
some
like cool like
interesting
scenes
shots.
of like the landscapes and stuff.
Yeah.
Like
I just wish there
and
were
that's what I'm
more.
saying. No, and that's what I'm saying. The first half of that movie has all that. In the second half, they're getting shot at. They're dropping these big old train things. Cars are getting split down the middle. The cars are
That
getting
was
flipped.
funny.
All
That was
kinds of
really
stuff. But I'm
funny.
saying like that's where you're like, oh, this is where Michael Bay. Even though I know you say like in Bad Boys. In Bad Boys, it was all the way through. In Transformers, it's like all the way
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
In this movie, it's like the first half, like you said, it sounds like. You know, like Arrow said, they told him kind of like, "Hey, you got to really get the story through.
Mm-hmm.
Like this first half, you really got to put all this story through, and then at the end you can gab your
I
action."
think that was more his
And,
choice, but
yeah,
I do
that's
agree
the
with you.
part
But
where
that's-
I say maybe with another director at the helm, this could have been avoided because it's like you're putting in all this Michael
Or at least
Bayism.
lessened.
Or
I
at least
think
lesson,
intensity.
but like you know, cars splitting in the middle. That was pretty funny.
I mean, like it looks good,
Oh,
and that's where you go
yeah.
that summer
Yeah.
blockbuster part, right? But if that was all the way through it, I think I would have been cool. Because that's the thing with John Wick, right? John Wick, you get that kind of action, you get that kind of stuff all the way through, you know, and that's what you get at the thing. When you do like, for example, Transformers, you get that all the way through. You know, that's what you expect. And like I said, in this part, it gives you this first half of how can I put it? Like almost like they pull you in with like the suspense and the thrill and the not knowing and all this stuff and they're like clone and you find out all this stuff and then all of a sudden now that you know it all. You don't need to know anything else because we're about to take you to town in this thing. And I think that's where it was like that. That's the reason why I'm assuming it got where it got, only because.
And
of that.
that's fair because I do think that this first half is stronger than the second.
Yeah.
The second half it comes through. The second half is kind of like I think a mileage may vary kind of
But
situation.
is that why you think it's underrated?
I do think it is. I think it is. I think they have
Or
still
why it
works
got
for
the
me.
reputation it got.
I think it got the reputation it got honestly because it's Michael Bay.
Yeah.
I think if like you had like,
but how
it
many
was
movies?
directed-
But how many movies has he gotten
With
done
just
before this
Ama-
movie came
with
out?
just
Because
the
Bad Boys,
Bad
because Bad Boys was
Bad
huge
Boys,
for him,
yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah.
that like,
So-
yo, Michael Bay can do
so-
no wrong.
But
Because Transformers hasn't come out yet.
That bring-
I think
yeah.
it was no, but Armageddon did.
But Armageddon was another movie that everybody loved. That
But
was a
it
good
was-
movie,
this,
wasn't
this
it?
was like two movies. So it was after Bad Boys 2, which was
Yeah.
him getting back. Bad Boys is his first movie. Bad Boys 2 was him getting back to his roots because right before Bad Boys 2 was Pearl Harbor, and that was when he tried to be like James Cameron, and he realized he couldn't do it.
But didn't Pearl Harbor also like? Didn't a lot of people?
But
say
that's
it was a
another
good
reason why.
movie?
How did Pearl Harbor do?
It did. It made money.
Well,
it
it's 'cause
did
it's
really
Pearl
badly
Harbor. They
critically.
sold it as Pearl Harbor action movie.
It still made money,
But
not
still-
as much as his movies
Okay, but
used
yeah,
to
when
make,
you
but
say
it didn't lose money.
you say it's
Okay.
underrated because of Michael Bay, but that brings up the question: is it because I believe when you say Michael Bay, it's because like we all know what we're expecting when we see from Michael Bay in the trailer because
Yeah.
he puts his name in everything. Maybe you go into this movie, and you're like, "What is it? This isn't Michael Bay." You know, it's kind of more like that. So we know. Me personally, when I go into a Michael Bay movie, I'm expecting just the dumbest shit, like popcorn action movie.
So-
I'm just like laughing the entire time. You know.
Let me put it this way, and I think this is a good way I can like kind of like find a middle ground between what you and I are saying is that I think if you have like Chris Nolan or somebody direct this movie, it's incredible. But if you have somebody like Peter Berg, who is like like he's made some stuff I like, but like he did also make Battleship, it would not be as good. It would be kind of a more generic movie. It wouldn't have as interesting shots. The action scenes would be like as big as this, but not nearly
Yeah,
as
I think
interesting.
Chris Nolan could have been a good.
This could be a great Nolan movie. Think about it,
It would.
Everything could be a great
Like-
Nolan movie.
Well, it would because he would have toned down the action, and that's
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
That's
But-
what I'm saying.
Those
Like,
action
Yeah.
scenes,
yeah,
we would have.
but
But here's the thing. Like I said, I think Michael Bay could have hit it out of the park. The movie he made, because the action is good. It's just over the top.
Which
If
But
he
that's
would've-
what we expect from Michael Bay.
No,
Yeah.
But you expect that all the way through. What I'm saying is, he's already
there you
setting.
go. There
He's
you
already
go.
setting us up in the beginning to be like, hey, this seems a little more toned down.
yeah.
You're gonna listen. You're gonna see. You're gonna.
It's
so
so- there's a
presenting it
jarringness
exactly.
then.
He's presenting a certain
And
way
that's
that we're
where
gonna
it
feel,
is.
and then all of a sudden you go, oh, Michael Bay, right?
Okay.
When before that you were like, okay, oh, this is different. Oh, it's like when you go, for example, like when we said Jim Carrey, some of these other guys that do their funny role. Like you see him in Ace Ventura and you're laughing, but then you see him in Truman Show. Maybe at first you're like, oh, I'm going to see a certain way. But as you go along, you go, oh, he's giving me a different side of him. I'm seeing something different. So you want to see that all the way through, and that's how it ends. And you feel good about it.
Yeah.
Here, you get a new maybe way he does it, and then all of a sudden it bounces you back to the old Michael Bay. And you're like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
So I think we all agree that it does feel like a two-thing movie, and that probably is why it has been underrated because of that. Because that's kind of like taking people out of this actual good story, an interesting story. And so I think that's where we could conclude that all of our thoughts are, is that because it felt like a two movies in one.
Yeah.
That's kind of like,
and it's kind of like, where do you fall on that? Does it work for
Exactly.
you? Does it not? And yeah,
And
Yeah.
that's the only reason why I'm saying like
But
that's why I
Mi-
think
by
it got the
Michael-
score that it got.
Yes.
yeah. Do you
'Cause
think
where
it
do you
deserved
fall?
that, or do you think it is underrated? Because you do like you
It's-
did like the first half at least.
Like I said, but just because I like the first half doesn't make it a whole movie. You know what I mean?
But do you,
Yeah.
but do you think it does have a bad reputation?
And it does have a back, and I
Do you
like I
think
said,
it
it
deserved
gives
that
you,
bad of a reputation? A
No.
40% loop
Now,
being the
here's
only.
the thing.
Well-
Here's the thing. If I watch the movie now, when I watched it, my expectations weren't like that at that moment that we were watching it. Obviously, now I go, well, the movie isn't that bad. Is it that great? I go, no, but it's a generic, like I said, a generic
Yeah.
story that I've seen before.
'Cause this
Of
is
like
we're
science
talking about
fiction.
underrated movies, and I would say that even if you don't
Well,
love this movie, I still think it qualifies
in
as
the
underrated.
terms
By-
of speaking,
It's like I said,
Right?
it's okay. Like
in
I said,
the
it's
era
okay.
of in the sphere of Michael Bay.
Look,
Yeah.
well, all
It is
yeah.
it is a
It-
gem in the Michael Bay history of movies.
All I'm gonna say is that while I do think that if you're into like cool
Soul
summer
Jam, the
blockbuster
Diamond in
action
the Rough.
movies, you should totally see it because this one also has a lot more story.
It's a great
to offer.
popcorn movie.
You
I
should,
think.
you should watch it.
But
it's cool.
but I can see where it gets its reputation,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think it's
That's what I'm
entirely
saying.
its own fault.
Yeah, I'm with the score it got. I'm cool with it. I mean, it got its score it's got. It's. But like I said, should you watch it? Yeah, why not? You know, it's not going to kill you to watch it.
Yeah,
it's not going to be a bad
Yeah,
movie.
it's not a bad movie.
It's not a bad movie. It's
We're all in
not. It's
agreement.
not. It's not.
Because 40% is a bad
Because here's
rating.
the thing too. Like, It's not a.
Below
I don't. I mean, there's little you
No,
can
it's
nitpick
Like
at it.
yeah, 60%
Like the ending
is
was a little
the
like
cutoff.
much, kind of, because then it just kind of ends. They're like outside looking at.
I
the,
kind of
Yeah,
like that.
but that's like a classic. Like,
yeah.
Sean
ending
Bean is
of
so
that.
fucking good as a bad guy in this. Can we just say, like
I
everybody's
mean,
great
Sean
in it.
Bean.
Like Steve Buscemi is fucking incredible in
Yeah,
this.
but
like,
Steve Buscemi's really good in a lot of the stuff he does.
Steve
Yeah.
Buscemi, that's
Steve Buscemi.
Steve
Yeah.
Buscemi was the best thing in Armageddon.
Michael Clark Duncan, by the way, in this
Aw.
movie. Oh my god, like
Yeah.
that's because one thing I would say, like I think this movie does really well in the first half is the exposition is given to you in a shown and not told kind of way, where
Yeah.
you're kind of like given bits of information, like oh, like they're cutting
Because
them up.
that's what I was saying.
something's-
Going back to it, you're kind of learning as these characters
Yeah.
learn as well. That's
Yeah.
what I like
I-
in movies.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's why I say at the second half, that's the problem. That's not what we miss.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you're
No,
being
I get
a
you.
certain
I
way,
get
and
you.
then
yeah,
it just completely.
But we've said that.
Yeah. But let me ask you this then, guys. What is I'm gonna make you choose one. What is your favorite Michael Bay movie? If you're gonna have to choose one,
Oh
So-
fuck! I don't have one.
So we
you
have.
gotta
all-
choose one. You gotta
No,
choose
but they're
one.
all the same to me. Like
Yeah,
that's the problem.
well,
Like he's
no,
not
okay.
like.
So
Would
we
you say
have-
this
Bad-
one then?
I guess
Maybe
Bad Boys
Bad
one.
Boys, yeah.
Yeah, maybe Bad Boys.
Either
Not this
this
one.
or Bad Boys.
No, you would
No,
say
well,
that you like.
well, because I'm saying like the other one has like the excitement and that all that stuff. So I would probably go with like Bad Boys 1. It's got its iconic. It's got Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. It has some special spice, I guess.
Okay,
Or the first Transformers.
yeah, first Transformers I actually like.
Yeah.
It's not great, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying
The rest of them are terrible, but the first one's actually
But the first
not
one's
too bad.
that's what I'm saying. The first one's
Yeah.
cool, or the first Bad Boys. I'd
Yeah.
probably say.
Ariel?
Maybe the first Transformers, or maybe this one because it is kind of like subtle.
Yeah. For me, I would say probably this one. Pain and Gain and Armageddon. I actually like a lot
I
too.
actually haven't seen.
Armageddon. You know what? Armageddon
Armageddon,
is
and
really
it's written
good.
by
yeah.
J.J. Abrams. That's why it's
That's
really good.
it's really
It was-
good.
it was
It's
the early
it's solid
J.J.
as hell.
Abrams, yeah.
It's just I've seen it so much that I'm kind of
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't watch Transformers the first one that often, but you know what? Yeah, maybe Armageddon.
And I really want to see 13 Hours because that's another kind of like
It's
No?
American propaganda.
Wow. Okay.
I heard it wasn't. I mean, I heard that it was like you were expecting it to be just like.
It could, but it's like I said, like we've all said, Michael Bay
Yeah.
just kind of
I have to
can't
check it
control
out,
of
but
his
yeah.
pants, you know.
Yeah, definitely check out though Pain and Gain, guys. That one's a really good one.
Is that the one with the Rock and
Yeah, and Mark Wahlberg
Yeah.
and
Yeah, it's really
Captain
good.
America.
Also, The Rock. I haven't seen The Rock. That's supposed to be really. He's got 2 movies in the Criterion Collection. Did you guys know that?
Right.
He's got The Rock and Armageddon are both Criterion Collection movies, which fucking trips me out every time. So you guys think this movie's reputation will ever change? Do you think it might?
Maybe if the iconic aura that Michael Bay like is known for, if that ever dies down,
Mhm.
and if people aren't like just or they let go of their prejudice towards Michael Bay, because like yeah, at the beginning of this when I had forgotten who directed, but when I saw Michael Bay name when it popped up when I rewatched it today, I was like, oh no, for a second.
Yeah, yeah,
But
and that's
so-
fair.
but
That's
then,
got
yeah.
himself
totally
to
fair.
blame for
So
that.
like
Yeah.
so I think if ever that iconic reputation kind of like has been put aside, then it has the potential.
I've never thought his reputation was bad. Like I get some people don't like his movies. Like I said, I've watched a lot of them and I like him. The big explosions. When I saw Michael Bay, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. We're about to get down. Like this is about to be some good action, but it wasn't, and that's why I was like, oh, okay. Not that it was bad. Like I said, I was expecting. Like I'm gonna sit down and like a popcorn movie, like a summer
Yeah.
blockbuster. I was gonna all the way through, and that's what when I sat down and I watched it, I saw something different. It's not bad. Obviously, the people that don't like Michael Bay are never gonna watch this, right?
Because
They're just
he's
not.
got a lot of critics, and I feel like he gets so much hate from like the big film buffs when there's so many worse directors.
That's true.
Yue fucking Boll, look at his movies.
Yeah,
Well-
but no, and
Nice.
like I was gonna say, like,
Or
can
don't.
can this movie make
don't.
difference? I don't know because this isn't like an Armageddon,
Yeah.
and this isn't like the other ones where maybe if in the, you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's in its own little space. Could it
Lives in its own
maybe
space.
if enough people
Yeah,
watch it?
I think what like
it's in its weird, like I said, it's in its own weird space where.
Mhm.
Hardcore, probably Michael Bay fans that want that action is what I'm saying. Not
Right.
like but they want that action, that stuff. Well, if they watch the first half, they might be turned off. But if they watch the second half, they're gonna get it. But if you know, it's one of the, it's hard to say. But it lives in its own space, and it's not a bad space to live in.
yeah. Sergio, what do you think?
In terms of the reputation changing over time, I guess the only thing that we could really do is just kind of watch it and, start going like, hey, this isn't the best, but it's a big improvement of a lot of the stuff that we get. But honestly, just the time it came out and the way it was like executed, I don't really see it changing. It's known for being a summer action blockbuster movie, and that's okay. Just I guess that didn't sell, and Transformers sell, and movies like that sell. So yeah, I'm not sure about anybody really coming back to this when you really don't need to.
Well, and I think Ariel brings up a really good point where, like you're saying, if he can break out of this Michael Bay thing, and I think that does have a legitimate chance of happening because he's basically done with Transformers, which is all he's done since after this movie. Like, he did movies in between them, but like that was the thing. Like, Michael Bay was like the Transformers guy, and if he makes like legitimately like an interesting,
Are you gonna make Bad Boys 3? Because aren't they making that movie?
Yeah, they're
Yes.
making Bad Boys 3. So like after like if he makes like another like kind of like interesting movie like this, like he makes some kind of like interesting blockbuster, and people like get like, oh, maybe we should give him another look. What was this other one he did that was like before the Transformers movies? They might give it a look for that. But that's if he does do this.
And you know what the thing is too, like as we start to get with older movies like Monkey Bones and like this that have, I guess you could say like older grainy film style, like you kind of get a little
shot on film. Like the movies shot on film look different than movies shot digitally.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, and nowadays, if you're looking at those young people, there's a certain way they've been used to watching the movies that they might even feel like, this is way too old. Like, that's why I say like it's one of those things that like it lives in its own place.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's all in the way it's.
Well, you're a young person, Sergio.
No, I'd say it looks like something that could come out today.
Yeah, I think it does. Like honestly, like it is kind of. I do have like a lot of trouble telling apart what films are shot on film and what are digitally. Like the Jurassic Park movies are still shot on film because they want to keep with the same aesthetic.
But hey, I mean, the Avengers, like Infinity War and Endgame, were shot on digital, and they look really good.
Yeah,
but
Nolan shoots on film, but you would never know it.
You know what? You can tell though. On some of them, it's the sharpness and the fall.
Yeah.
There's a thing. No, there is a big thing. Like when you really start looking at it, there's a big difference between digital and film.
I'd say 95% of people won't notice, but like people with a critical eye will notice.
True.
Yeah, but that's like the whole thing of like if you're going out of your way.
Yeah, if you're a big
find it.
movie buff, you're gonna.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what we're
But then
talking
again,
That's a fair.
It's
that's a
also
fair point.
sometimes where you need to also be able to tell the difference of when it affects the movie and when you could put it aside and judge it without it.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
Yeah, but overall, I'd say I would definitely recommend it. You guys would say give it a watch.
I say give it a watch if you have a chance. I guess.
Ariel?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not
I
something you
did.
should run out, but when you have
Yeah,
when you got your you watched all your stuff on Netflix and you need something.
Yeah, just
popped
chill
up.
out on your couch, pop some popcorn,
Yeah.
and just relax.
Yeah. And one more thing, I just want to slip this in because you did mention that it was shot, like the way it was shot. It actually, Michael Bay did use like a special like camera that was used for like the first time in this. So he does like to kind of like push. The boundaries
I mean
He has
that's the
toys
thing
that
because
he
you
likes to
could
play
you could
with,
even
yeah.
shoot like I don't know. I mean it's like other people. People shoot with digital cameras, but you can use old vintage lenses and get
Well, these
almost
days
that
you
film
can make
look.
a movie with an iPhone.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. I mean, Steven Soderbergh has made some amazing movies with an iPhone, and he's. Yeah, but yeah, I'd say anyway, we'd all like at least recommend it on some level.
On some level,
Yeah, our enthusiasm varies a little bit. But anyways, thanks guys for listening. Hit subscribe on whatever podcast app you're listening on, so you can get new episodes every 2 weeks when they come out. Give us a rating and a review if you could. 5 stars on Apple Podcasts really helps a lot. And one of the big things is just tell somebody about it in real life. That's the biggest thing.
Or share it.
Yeah.
You can share it out
Yeah.
on whatever platform you use.
But once again, we're the Undercast company made of Ariel and Sergio Ortiz of Nerd Incorporated,
Thank you for being amazing.
Fred Torres and Alan, who's been off in the background.
What's up?
Oh, what do you got to say, Alan?
One last question. So I know you guys mentioned this very frequently throughout this podcast about who would be the better director for this film. So I asked this to the audience and to you guys real quick. Who do you think would have made this film a lot better?
Yeah.
In your eyes.
Yeah, like write it, like send it on social media or send us an email at undercastcompany@gmail.com. Let us know who do you think would direct this movie and do a really good job with it.
Ben Affleck.
Actually, yeah, probably.
Kevin Smith.
But thank you. I'm Derek McDuff. You guys can find my stuff I'm on Instagram at Derek's_photos, or I've also got another podcast called Infinity Stones and Dragon Bones, which Ariel and some of these other guys are on sometimes. So give that a listen. Guys, we'll be back soon. So stay tuned for another episode, and I'll see you guys in another life.
Later.
Later.